Crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel. Heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe or we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Gander the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
How are you, my friend?
Doing well. How you been, Bob?
Good. Very, very busy. There's a lot going on, obviously. We got people taking shots at the president again. We got in the middle of a war that we didn't really know was coming. And now we're going to relive tomorrow night one of the worst periods of our lifetimes, I think, what was done in our state just about 6 years ago now.
Yeah, it was terrible, but it's critical that we don't forget. I mean, they're trying so hard to memory hole us. They don't want us to remember our kids being forced to wear masks, put behind plexiglass, us being told that we have to walk the right way down the grocery store aisle. I mean, for God's sakes, we could walk into a restaurant, but we had to wear the mask until we sat down because COVID only worked over 6 feet up in the air. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And yet this bimbo has the audacity to run for the governor. The fact that it's even a serious thing is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, it tells you how much more power pharma has in the state than they should.
Well, that's a really great point. Maybe it's a great question. Is it pharma and the power that they have that, to get somebody like Amy Acton into this position to potentially take over the state, or is it a sign of how far the Democrat Party in the state of Ohio has fallen, that they can't find a legislator? They can't find somebody that's popular enough in the General Assembly or somebody who's actually, been in Congress perhaps to step in and say, I want to lead the state, that they have a non-politician, never run for office before. Her only public exposure she's ever had was the nightmare that she created in COVID. And that's all they've got to throw up there. Maybe it's a sign of how weak the Democrat Party is. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. The fact that she's never done anything other than lock us down. But I will say, listen, the Democrats are insane. They're certifiably nuts. If you're voting Democrat at this point, you probably need a mental health check. That said, DeWine's not exactly bashing her. I mean, you know, we've got a rhino problem in the state. We have a red supermajority in the state, and we just got too many guys like DeWine that are not willing to take a stand on anything, and that's because of the money. The money running through the state is insane. Farmer runs the state up one side and down the other. And I mean, Bob, you know, you've been in this game for a very long time. The Chamber of Commerce in the state is absolutely a leftist rag group, and they are 100% pushing these things. You know, it's not that they're coming out necessarily, oh, as Democrat or as Republican, but they were big pro lockdown. They're big pro pharma, big pro everything that DeWine did during COVID. And without them, there'd be no issue. So, I mean, it's a combination, I think, of the special interests, the big money, the power of pharma, and yeah, the Democrats are insane.
Yeah, that's a great summation. It is all of those things, Tom. And going back to Acton for just a second, and you said Mike DeWine isn't exactly condemning her. Mike DeWine is campaigning for her. In my estimation, if you recall, Vivek Ramaswamy did not get the endorsement of Mike DeWine very early on. The ORP did it, which you can debate whether or not they should have or not. President Trump did it very, very early on. But Mike DeWine, I asked him on this show last year, actually the radio side of things, last year, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, whatever it was. And I asked him, are you going to endorse Vivek Ramaswamy? And at the time, he said, well, we don't know who's all going to be in the race yet. He was really hoping he could convince his Lieutenant Governor Tressel to get into this thing because he did not want to endorse. Trump endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy. And I said to him on my program, are you sure you're not going to endorse Amy Acton? Because you gave her the power to run the state in 2020, 2021, and 2022 in the COVID response. You literally let her make all of the decisions. So I figured since you trusted her then, maybe you'd endorse her. He got pissed off, which is why I haven't had him back on then, because I said, are you going to endorse Amy Acton? But then last week, Tom, he pretty much did. Amy Acton was taking a lot of shots for the stuff that we're talking about right now, everything that you just ran down, plus a million things more that we're going to talk about tomorrow night. But she made all of those decisions. And Mike DeWine, who ultimately endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy when Macaulay came on board as the LG, but Mike DeWine came to the defense publicly of Amy Acton, saying, no, don't blame her for those things. Blame me. I made all those decisions. Well, he's term limited. He can say that, but he's protecting her. To me, that's almost actively campaigning for the Democrat.
Yeah, well, I mean, is that a surprise to anybody? I mean, this guy is as close to a Democrat as you can have. I mean, he's literally the definition of a rhino. Mike DeWine was chosen as the Republican most likely to sell his state out in this country with regards to the COVID lockdowns and everything else. He was in the Fauci emails. You know, they looked at I think there were 3 governors, if I recall, that they were looking at, and they went with Mike DeWine because they knew if there was one guy that was owned by pharma and as close to a leftist as you can get, it would be Mike DeWine. And, you know, one of the things that people don't remember or understand is that without Mike DeWine, you don't have COVID, right? Because if one of the Republican governors didn't sell out and shut down their state, then COVID became a partisan issue. And then nothing happens, right? Then it just goes away. There's none of this. But this whole thing, you have to understand, they had to get the first Republican governor to sell out and lock their state down. And that was Mike DeWine. And remember, that was a pharma move, right? That was a pharma move because without that universal emergency, that universal lockdown, there was no EUA for the COVID vaccines, which is really what COVID was all about. And, you know, DeWine's got deep ties to pharma. He's down in Cincinnati. It's farmland down there. And, yeah, it was really mind-blowing. So Mike DeWine's endorsement is one of the best reasons for me Mike DeWine's informal endorsement of Amy Acton is one of the best reasons for me to campaign against her. By the way, you were right. The AI rendering, I didn't even know who you were in that AI rendering. And I looked at myself and it looked like my face ran through some sort of a wood chipper or something. It's like, oh my God.
I know it is so bad, you know, but we all rely on it to some extent, some way or another. Here's a better version. That's your Twitter profile. Hopefully people can see that right now. Yeah, there you go. That's your X profile, so people can check that out. The Tom Renz Show. What is that? Putting an axe in the skull of tyranny. That's not exactly a hidden message, is it, Tom?
No, well, we got the big battle axe back there,
Yep.
which is actually a real battle axe. It's an actual thing.
From what battle?
Well, it was. I had it made.
Okay.
It wasn't actually used in a battle yet, although I keep waiting.
I was going to say, you're going to have to acquire one of those, aren't you?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. I'd love to get like an old antique that was actually used. I mean, that'd be cool. I collect that sort of stuff. I've been in martial arts my whole life, and I enjoy punching things. I'm getting old now, so I don't like getting punched back as much as I used to. But but yeah, we have to take a stand, and we have to be bold about it, right? We don't really. Donald Trump came in, and one of the things that I talked a lot about when he came in is that it's not a time for us to stand down. It's not a time for us to go back to sleep. It's not a time for us to go back to 2019, 2018, when we thought we had someone saving us and we thought we had a free nation. And it's turned out that was probably more correct than I'd even want it to be. Trump's came in, and we still have tyranny all over the place. I mean, some of the stuff going on is just insane, and we can't pass the SAVE Act. We can't. How do we not? We have a Republican Congress, we have a Republican president, we have an arguably Republican Supreme Court, and we can't pass the SAVE Act. This is foundationally, we've had no accountability because the DOJ is crooked as hell. I understand it's Trump's DOJ. It's still crooked as hell. They didn't fire everybody. And until they do fire everybody, they're going to remain crooked. I mean, we went back to sleep. Everybody kind of went back to sleep and said, oh, Trump's got it. But Trump is one man. He's always been one man. And the problem we have is that the deep state is very, very deep. And we can see it here in Ohio, too. We talk about DeWine and his crew. Well, we've been Republican in Ohio for quite some time. We were Republican during the lockdowns, yet it still happened. So it's one of those things where we have to understand being Republican and voting Republican is not enough. We have to get involved in the primaries. We've got to get involved with running for office. And we've got to make sure it's the right Republicans, not this rhino garbage that's out there all over the place.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'm going to come back to Trump in a moment and about the SAVE Act, Save America Act, and why we can't get stuff done in Congress in a second. But I'm going to focus laser-like, or ask you to, on the lesson, because we're going to do this thing tomorrow. We're going to walk down Nightmare Lane and remind everybody. And it's basically just going to be, here's why you cannot give Amy Acton the keys to the state because of what we did. But Tom, to your knowledge, have we done enough since learning all of the lessons of COVID and the lessons of what was done to us during that time? Has the General Assembly, the Republican, you mentioned it, the Republican General Assembly done enough to make sure that the shit that was done to us during that period of time will never happen again? I want laws to say no one can ever do what Amy Acton, ruled by fiat under the nodding approval of Mike No Spine. Nobody can ever do that again. That's what I fear. It's one thing to look back. It's one thing to look back at that, that period, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. And we're going to lament all of the things that were done. But are we assured that it won't happen again to us, that the next pandemic or whatever they use to strip away our rights, that they're not just going to be able to go right back at it?
No, by no means are we sure of that. In fact, I know you'll recall when we passed early on the legislation, we overrode DeWine's veto. The legislation limited his power in an emergency. So that was a big, big deal. And that was one of the most important laws passed in the country. I mean, I worked in so many states, and not many states were able to do that. That was a huge deal. I mean, you were a big part of it. I did my share. We were all pushing for that everywhere, and that was critical. So that does help a little bit. But we still have laws. Right to choose laws. Things like we really need to strongly push medical freedom across the board. Things like we know and do everything we can to limit any force or any coercion in vaccines, vaccine mandates, or any other medicine. We really need to go back to recentering on the doctor-patient relationship. That's foundational. And what I mean by that is the doctor-patient relationship needs to be defined by the doctor and the patient, not the doctor and the patient and the insurance company, not the doctor and the patient and the federal government, not the doctor and the patient and the state government. We need to do more to protect doctors. I mean, the way doctors' licenses were attacked, and and actually during that time, professional licenses across the board were attacked, was appalling. Now we've got some good state boards and some different places, but these doctors' licenses. My friend Sherry Tenpenny, we had to defend her license.
Yeah.
Things like access to some of these drugs, ivermectin, it's still very limited.
Yeah, all those things, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, they demonized and they said, can't be used, and called it, just everything that they tried to do. Tom, again, I'm looking at it and saying, if there is, not just if, because I think that was more of a dry run, but when they try to retake control of the population, what we can put in our bodies, what our doctors are allowed to prescribe, what pharmacists are allowed to reject. That's one of the big things that the medical freedom community, like Stephanie Stock, who's running for state rep, by the way, who I endorse and support, she's shining a spotlight on all of this stuff. Tom, I don't think is any different. And nothing has really changed since we went through that nightmare. And I'm legitimately worried about part 2.
Yeah, well, it's going to happen. And I will tell you this: there's more. Right now they're talking a little bit about energy lockdowns, things like that, and that's certainly not beyond the scope. But remember, and I know this is going to make people fussy, but the truth is the truth. Donald Trump issued an executive order on gain of function. And everybody said, oh, good, we need to deal with that. Here's the problem. That executive order actually enshrined gain of function and brought it onshore. So we're doing it here in the United States right now. And in fact, there's very strong evidence, Peter McCullough and his crew put out, that the bird flu that went around a few years ago originated from one of the gain of function labs down in Georgia. And I've looked at that evidence myself. I agree with them. That's a very, very high likelihood. These lab leaks that happen in these dangerous experimental labs, they happen. In COVID, there's a real good question. It's fair to ask whether it was a lab leak or intentional. But, at the end of the day, we are now working and performing gain of function work here in the United States. We probably ought to make sure that it's banned in Ohio. But I don't see that happening.
It should be banned all across the country. You're exactly right. And I apologize for the interruption, but just since you brought this up, with respect to whether it was intentional or a leak, how is it anything but intentional, considering what happened quickly thereafter? Now, President Trump championed and celebrated, Trump warp speed. We got this vaccine in record time. But the reality was it kind of wasn't, because that had been introduced and had been developed for a very long time. Robert Malone, was one of the patent holders of the RNA technology, the messenger RNA technology that was used for these shots. And the belief, according to a lot of people in the medical community and in the research community, is they had this and were just waiting for the chance to use it. And this was the chance they were waiting for, which is why, again, it's very unlikely it was a leak. It was, it was released upon the people so that they could actually start this massive, worldwide global experiment.
Yeah, well said. And yes, it was. I actually testified down in Congress so we actually broke the news. It's interesting. I just saw the indictment yesterday related to the origins of SARS-CoV-2. Well, we broke that in September of 2022. Andrew Huff, Pam Popper, and I put together a report, sent it down to Congress, laid out the whole thing. And it was indisputable. We knew that this was created in the lab. We knew EcoHealth Alliance was behind it. USAID, by the way, USAID, the CIA, which means the CIA was involved. We knew that, all these guys were involved, Ralph Barrick. And one of the things, actually, by the way, I want everybody to hear this. This technology that was used in Wuhan, China to create this bioweapon could not legally be exported without authorization from our federal government. You can't send technology to create bioweapons to China without our government knowing about it. So this was not only done with USAID funding, which is the CIA is has its hands all over that. But it was also done with approval somewhere. Someone approved this, which someone we haven't been able to find. But this could never have happened otherwise. Ralph Barrick was, teaching these Chinese Communist Party members how to create bioweapons. And again, it's not something you can do. So this was done not only with foresight, and not only was that, by the way, when you create a bioweapon, you create the vaccine or the treatment at the same time you create it in case it gets out. This was absolutely all done at the same time. It looks like we can prove that it was there by the mid-2010s. There's arguments and people who believe it's before that. And it was done with full knowledge and with complicity of our federal government.
Yeah, and that's a disturbing reality. And I mentioned President Trump and the warp speed and then everything that you just said with respect to the CIA's involvement in these things. It's very disturbing. And we're looking for a champion, and President Trump is supposed to be our champion. And by the way, in so many ways he is. And I also don't think he was complicit in what became the COVID mandates, the COVID shot mandates, which of course after they stole the election, which is what Joe Biden did. But President Trump was responding to a global emergency and an American emergency in which people were freaking out. We have to do something. We have to do something. And so boom, here comes Operation Warp Speed. I don't think he was complicit. I think he was forced into an action that was probably a little bit, not probably, it certainly was premature, because the long-term studies have not been done. I think he was doing the best he could at the time. But here we are now, Tom, we're 6 years after the start of it and roughly 4 years after the worst of the worst, was done to us. And they're still discovering the effects of those shots on people, including clots, blood clots that are still being found, people who are suffering from long-term cardiac problems because of the shots that they took. Last time I spoke with Robert McCullough, Dr. McCullough told me that they can verify more people have died from those shots than died from COVID. Now, I can't recall his specific numbers and how he came up with that, but he was very adamant that that was the case. So again, we sit here rehashing what happened and looking back at it, but we need to look forward and say, how can we ensure that type of mandate will never be issued again, especially given its lethal repercussions?
Well, it's absolutely going to be issued again. I mean, right now, listen, Trump was, and I'm sorry, I supported the president. I fought for the president, but Trump was a useful idiot with COVID. I mean, yes, this stuff was there. Now, I'm not going to say
that doesn't make, and I apologize again, that doesn't mean he's an idiot. A useful idiot is a tool that somebody else tries to manipulate to advance their outcome, and they don't realize they're being manipulated. That's what I agree with you.
100%. I don't think he had a clue. Now, I'm just going to tell you, I kind of led this all over the country. The amount of work I had to do to find this, and I had to I didn't believe myself. I always believed what I was saying, but I had to double check the work. The amount of effort it took to uncover what they were doing was monumental. I would go in, I'd argue with doctors. They'd tell me why I was wrong. I'd tell them why I wasn't. We'd go back and forth. Eventually, I always won because I was right. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump had the most profoundly brilliant liars and crooks around him of anybody in the world, and they did a great job of pulling the wool over his eyes. So, to this day, he's still yelling about Operation Warp Speed as being something that's good. Operation Warp Speed led to the single greatest public health failure in the history of humanity, and facilitated the largest crime against humanity and human history, which is the COVID-19 vaccines. And I say that with respect and full knowledge of things like World War II and some of these horrible things that have happened. But this is a horrific thing. Right now, we know, and I've posted repeatedly, a 2006 industry guidance document from the FDA where they acknowledge that these mRNA vaccines are a cause of cancer. That's why we have turbo cancer right now. That data is becoming more and more useful, and it's being proven on every single day. We see more of that. The autoimmune issues. We see people with dementia, brain fog, serious issues thinking. This was the most profound and evil crime against humanity. And let's talk about the kids, Bob. Let's talk about kids. Not one single healthy kid was ever proven to die from COVID at the height of the pandemic. Yet these pharmaceutical companies who knew that and knew that these vaccines had no preventive value because they didn't even bother testing it, and actually no benefit whatsoever for a child. They knew that there was zero benefit for children, and all sorts of risks. They covered up the myocarditis, they covered up all these things. They knew that there was a high risk and no benefit for a child, and yet they put it forth, and they tried to shove it in every kid's arm they could. Anyways, do you know what that is, Bob?
They still are, by the way. Every flu season now they're saying get your COVID shot, and there are still mothers, parents who have been completely brainwashed by the pandemic, indoctrination. They're still jamming those needles into their kids' arms to get boosters every year, just like it's a flu shot now. It's insane.
Do you know what that is? That is paid murder. That's paid murder.
Okay.
These pharmaceutical companies, they don't care if your child dies from their product as long as they make the $60 off of it. They don't care how many children die as long as they get their few dollars off of this poison. It is profound. If you ever want to truly understand evil, look at the pharmaceutical companies who push these unsafe, ineffective jabs that have no benefit whatsoever in children, but could kill a child. They're willing to risk killing a child for a few bucks in their pocket. Yet somehow Mike DeWine and too many Republicans and all the Democrats still seem to love these guys.
Yeah. And did you see there's a current event on this, Tom, in addition to our event tomorrow. And let me throw that back up there again for everybody to see. Tomorrow, we're going to be in Strongsville. Tom Renz will be with us on the stage. It'll be kind of a panel. Oh, that's the wrong one. It'll be a panel discussion. There he is right there, or the facsimile thereof. But we're going to be in Strongsville at the Encore Event Center, 6:30 tomorrow night. Tom, myself, and Judge. She's the only one that came out looking okay in this, I guess. Judge Jill Lansinger, who's running for the Ohio Supreme Court, and she was a very, very strong voice for opposing the lockdowns and opposing everything that was done to us by Mike DeWine and Amy Acton during that period. But Tom, current event here for today's discussion, just since we're chatting about this, David Morins, you're familiar, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Dr. David Morins, former senior advisor to Fauci at NIAID, was indicted on federal charges alleging he conspired to hide communications related to COVID research during the pandemic. The DOJ says he used private email to evade public record laws. He concealed or destroyed records tied to COVID research grants and was involved in efforts related to reviving a controversial coronavirus grant. Todd Blanche called it a profound abuse of trust during the pandemic. Okay, good, go for it, get him. Why not Fauci, though?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get the Biden auto pen pardon. And one of the things you got to understand is this DOJ does not want to do anything real, right? I don't trust this DOJ at all. Now, I'm thrilled that they got rid of Pam Bondi.
Same.
But Blanche is not any better. And I'll tell you, here's one of the biggest tells I've seen so far, because we see a couple of cases get filed yesterday. We got Morins and Comey. Have you looked at the Comey case at all, Bob?
Yeah, well, just what they reported yesterday, just what Blanche said, and what the assistant attorney general or whatever he is in Eastern District of North Carolina. I played those clips earlier, and Tom, and you can go ahead and finish your point here. But I actually said, thank God they got rid of Bondi. At least Blanche is doing something here. We wanted Comey and a whole bunch of other people wearing the iron bracelets, and finally that's happening. I don't know what's going to happen with the trial, but they're at least pushing it now, and they weren't doing that under Bondi. But go ahead and make your point.
Well, at the risk of being the guy who's a little bit too jaded and skeptical, which I'm definitely that guy at this point.
That's all right.
Because remember, we didn't fire anybody at the DOJ. We didn't fire, of the 5,000 FBI agents that were involved with the Fedsurrection going after the J6ers, like about 150 of them have been fired, right? So, I mean, this is the same DOJ we had under Joe Biden. It really is. It just, there's a couple different names that have changed place, but unless you get rid of the bad actors, it's not going to change anything. The guys that do the work are the same people. So
Well, you're a lawyer, Tom. Can you speak to that? Because I agree with you, but what I've gathered, and I think just from reading a little bit and just observing, is that he can't fire the lot of them. All of the DOJ lawyers that were responsible, as you say, Biden's DOJ, you can't fire all of them, because who are you going to replace them with in terms of either A, experience, or B, competency that you can trust? I mean, if you're talking about firing hundreds or thousands of lawyers and replacing them, like, is there a pool that's that deep where the president and whomever he chooses as his AG can identify and vet and know that these people aren't going to be any worse than the ones that just got fired? I don't understand how that works. Maybe you do.
Well, I mean, what you're going to have to do is go look, and you're going to have to do some real work on it. But at the end of the day, the key thing you said there was competency and trust.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are proven incompetent and untrustworthy. So why would we leave them there? I mean, frankly, I'd rather have someone who is a little less experienced but was honest than what we're getting now. I mean, just the application of some common sense. I'd take a trained monkey over someone who called a parent that went to a school board meeting a terrorist. I mean, I'd rather have no prosecutions than prosecutions like of parents that were. Listen, I am not of the camp that trading my security for freedom is an acceptable thing. I am 100% of the belief that I'd rather have 1,000 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to jail. Freedom is paramount, and it's the thing we have to fight for in this country. And when we have a broken justice system that's weaponized because we have a bunch of crook lawyers with too much power, listen, I'll take the honest guy who's less qualified every day over the crook who's willing to sell out our principles and our freedoms for whatever purpose, because you can train someone to be a better lawyer. You can't train the corruption out of a crook. So, that's
that is so well said. That is very well said, and I second all of that. I'm thinking of it more along the lines. It's not a question of should you take the qualified one who's corrupt or the less qualified one who's honest. I'm not saying that. I agree with you. I would take that as well. But I mean, just from the sheer volume of people that would have to be replaced, like, how do they do that? Like when ICE wanted to expand. And they said, we're going to hire X number of new ICE agents to start this largest deportation, et cetera. I was told that they got a couple 100,000 applicants for 10,000 positions, that they were hiring. And that was great to hear, but now somebody's got to sift through all of those. And can the DOJ function and literally work during a transitional period in which 1,000 lawyers are being fired or 5,000 lawyers or whatever, and we've got to sift through, the applications of more and get them all on the job and up to speed? And I don't know. It just seems like it's a large job to do in a year so far of the presidency.
Well, but the problem is they didn't start, right? So the way you do this is you do 100 at a time. You assign a bunch of people to go through 100 at a time, and you get rid of the worst at first, and keep going. And the most important thing are the people who are vetting the new guys coming in, and making sure that you've got a very strong group of people that's going to vet the new guys coming in. But you do it at one. You're right. Firing everybody day one and doing it all at once doesn't work. But firing 100, 200, whatever a month and replacing them with people that are functional is absolutely doable. The problem is that they're doing zero.
Well, you're right. But and this is, you said, maybe you're the jaded guy, and I'm going to be the cynical guy, though. Again, that doesn't work. If you replace 100 of them at once, all of the others know their time is coming. They are going to immediately start shredding and deleting and whatever they have to do to protect themselves and to stay on. If they know that the purge is coming little by little by little, they'll do whatever corrupt things they have to do to protect themselves, or they'll get the worst of the worst. Will start. If you start with the worst of the worst, the next level guys will start to do everything they can to finish the job before their pink slip comes. So, I don't think there's any easy way to drain that DOJ swamp, is I guess the cynical part of me that I'm saying.
Agreed. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And remember something. When I was running out all over the country to get Donald Trump in here on my own dime, I was doing it because I wanted him to do the hard work. A lot of people, one of the things that I'll hear out there is, well, why didn't you say anything about Epstein during the Biden administration? My personal answer is that because I was busy fighting the COVID corruption, and I just couldn't get there. Also because there was no way Biden was going to do anything. Biden was garbage. Everybody knows Biden was garbage. Do you really want Trump to be compared to Biden? Is that who you're, that's your mark? That's your watermark? The thing is we fought for Trump because we wanted more. I wanted accountability. I wanted the swamp drained. I didn't want more of the same. I didn't want another rhino. I didn't want another sellout. I didn't want a Democrat. I wanted a guy who was going to fight and do the hard things to drain the swamp. And yes, cleaning the DOJ is tough. No question about it. And you're right, they might do that. So, I mean, and we can go back and forth all day on this. What I would say to you in response to you is, okay, so not everybody at the DOJ is bad. You kind of sift through, find the good guys. I mean, I know a bunch of good people at the DOJ. You get them, you put them in a position of power to watch everything. And if anybody's doing anything wrong, they're fired immediately. I mean, but is it perfect? No. But is it necessary? And the thing is that's what we fought for, was real systemic long-term change. And the reason that the administration is getting so much blowback right now is because we fought for accountability, real accountability for the people at the top. The Epstein pedophiles, the people that were behind COVID, Anthony Fauci, you know what, we might not be able to get him for some things, but we can probably get him for others. There's an argument to be made that there's ways to work around that part. Is it going to work? I don't know, but I'd love to see him go through the hell he put us through. Give it a try. There's a lot of different things that we should be doing. And one of the things that I'm going to tell you right now with this DOJ, and this is a prediction, yes, it's cynical, and yes, it's shaded. The case that was filed against James Comey had nothing to do with treason, nothing to do with sedition, nothing to do with violations related to FISA, which we're pushing again, which is incomprehensible to me. Nothing to do with Crossfire Hurricane, the 2020 election steal. No, we filed two counts based on a picture of some damn seashells that I had to look up when I saw it. I'd never heard of 86 anything.
You're kidding. No, don't fool me.
Bob, why would 86? I lie about this?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's as common in our culture as any. I don't know. It's anything. When we were, 86. It's like when somebody says, "Yeah, I'll have the double cheeseburger." 86, the mustard. That means get rid of the mustard.
Never heard that in my life.
Never heard that phrase before.
No, I got to be honest with you, Bob. We're about the same age. I mean, give or take. Yeah. Even as a kid, like I thought when that came out in 86, 47, why is everybody making a deal out of that? I literally had to look it up. I had never heard that.
You know what the 8 and the 6 stand for, right? Did you look that up?
I looked it up for the show last night because I saw the charges. I know that they're referencing 86 as a kill or murder type thing.
Yeah.
Now, but so last night what I did was I ran a couple of AI searches trying to figure out the origins of 86. Because, outside of what I've seen in the media, I've never heard that ever in my life.
That's wild.
And yeah. So that was a surprise to me.
But that's his defense. I mean, first of all, just to clarify for everybody who doesn't know, 86, basically the phrasing means after you kill him, you drive him 8 miles out and bury him 6 feet under so he can never be found again. That's what it means to get rid of the person you're killing. But the point is for James Comey to say, I didn't know what it was, then why did you post it? You freaking posted it. If you had just seen that, you wouldn't say, what an interesting shell formation. Yeah. You're the freaking former FBI director. You got fired by this guy. You have publicly excoriated this guy. You hate this guy. And you're going to try to convince us that you just happened upon something and then I didn't know what it meant. That's why I posted it. Once somebody told me what it meant, I immediately took it down. My ass. That was a way of saying, get rid of 47, get rid of Donald Trump. You might not have been aware of it. And I don't doubt your word, obviously, Tom, but
I'd be happy to admit it.
But I promise you he did. There's no reason he posts that otherwise.
Well, but here's the problem, Bob. And as I look at this case, my problem is the case is garbage and it's weak and it should be one of 50,000 other crimes he committed that were far more serious. I'm not saying that threatening the president isn't serious, and I'm not saying that that's okay, but I'm saying there's a lot more he should be charged with that has a lot more meaning to this country. Now, the problem with this 86 thing, and let me explain this from a lawyer's perspective. To get the conviction on this, you have to prove intent. and you have to prove a specific intent to threaten the president, right? Now, it's not a hard thing for him to say, and whether it's true or not is hard to say, but you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very high standard, that his intent was not, let's just get rid of the president. His intent wasn't, let's fire the president. It wasn't, 86 the pickles off the cheeseburger type thing. Let's get him out of office. It was to physically threaten violence towards the president. And while you and I will agree, and I will agree with you that, okay, given what I now know is the meaning of that, yeah, maybe he was. It's very realistically likely that he was. But to prove that in a courtroom is a very high standard, and you're proving intent on something that he then a few days later went on Jimmy Kimmel or Colbert or someone and said, "Oh yeah, we didn't know. We just thought it was a neat thing at the beach, and we didn't know that." Now, is that likely? No. Common sense says no, but we have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm going to tell you, remember, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. A good lawyer, and he'll have a damn good lawyer, can absolutely make a very strong argument that it's reasonable to doubt that he was actually threatening violence. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm okay with having the president removed. I didn't like him." And so my point is, when we look at this, is not to debate whether 86 means what it means, not to debate whether or not this was a good thing to do. It wasn't. There's nothing good about this. My point is that this crook is getting away with a lot of very serious crimes that he should be being charged with, and we're dinking around with a case that he's likely going to win or get off on.
Well, I will agree with you 1,000 times over that there are far more important things to charge him with. Those are obviously harder things to prove, and maybe this one is too hard to prove too, and because of what you just said. Obviously, a grand jury heard enough to say, yeah, it's very likely he did that. They returned the true bill, so here we go. And we know about you can indict a ham sandwich and all the rest, but they saw
perjury is not hard to prove, right? In some of his instances, in some of what he's done. Going after him for perjury, conspiracy, right? Because if you perjured yourself as part of a larger project, there's probably a conspiracy to do so. There's a lot of things that they could have done. They could have tied this into major RICO actions related to the 2020 election. There's so many things they could have done, but instead they're digging around. And my concern with this, Bob, is that we've got the same thing that we had with Pam Bondi, just a little bit different packaging. We're not going to go after the big guys and do the hard cases. We're going to do these crappy little one-offs to try and save some face before the election. But, is it going to be meaningful or substantive? And I'm very, very jaded and skeptical at this point, because there's so many meaningful and strong, powerful cases that they could put out there against real deep state members that would have a huge impact. And they're not that hard of cases. If I can look at Republicans' data on the internet, which she can pull, tell me the DOJ can't figure out the same thing. Tell me that our Department of Justice, that we spend billions and billions of dollars on every year, that has what we would argue are the best and brightest attorneys and law enforcement on the planet, can't do what a couple of internet guys can do using Grok and Twitter.
No, you're right about that, Tom. I completely agree. You said a few minutes ago, not all of the attorneys that work in the Department of Justice are crap or are corrupt or whatever. There are some good guys in there.
No.
Why wouldn't those people be moving on this? And I don't know how responsibilities are allocated. I don't know what the Attorney General says and who's in what department and who gets to push what. But because I agree with you, all of those things kind of appear to be readily available, and you would think that somebody in the DOJ would be able to kind of pull the strings there and look around and say, yeah, we've got enough here to go get them on perjury for this, that, or the other thing. Why aren't some of the good guys in the department that you're talking about moving?
Well, because they're not going to be allowed to. If they do it without permission, they're going to get fired, and someone's going to replace them who will throw the case or withdraw the case. And so they get fired for nothing. There's absolutely no benefit whatsoever. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't do anything. There's just no benefit.
So why would Trump choose then leadership at the DOJ, not just the AG, but in whatever other levels down from that? Why would he accept this, considering he was the target? He was the target of Crossfire Hurricane. He was the target of Arctic Frost. He was the guy that they were all acting against. Why wouldn't he pick somebody who's going to get him, even if it's purely revenge driven because of what they did to me, which is not a great thing to be, but it's also, understandable. Why would he pick somebody that isn't going to go out there and get this and really make an example of them and lock them all up so that nobody else can do that?
Well, I want to really key in on what you said, because it's critical. A lot of people say, it's because he's sold out. And I don't know that I agree with that, because even on issues that are dear to him, because Trump is definitely, if there's one thing Trump is not, he's not the kind of guy who you stab him in the back and he forgives you, right? He's the kind of guy,
loyalty matters to him.
He's going to go after you. So there's a lot of people Trump would like to see in jail. So I'll tell you what I think. I think it's the same thing that happened during COVID. He has people who someone says these are the best and the brightest. They tell him, oh, we can't do it, Mr. President. There's just no case. There's no way we can do this. Trump is not a lawyer any more than he was a doctor during Operation Warp Speed. He doesn't know these things. And despite the fact that we got a lot of cultists out there that seem to think Trump is Jesus and omnipotent, he's not. He's a normal guy who, he does great things. He's got some things he's done great. He's got a lot of things he's done that are poorly. But at the end of the day, he is a normal guy. He doesn't know. He's not a lawyer. So if the lawyers come and tell him, hey, this won't work, and it's a lawyer he trusts or he believes to be a good lawyer, well, I mean, that's what he's going to go with. I mean, he's a business leader. In business, if you're running a major corporation, if you're, a wildly successful billionaire guy like Donald Trump, your advisors tell you what you need to know, and you listen to them. So his advisors come in there, no, there's just no case. Oh, there's nothing we can do. I mean, the Letitia James and James Comey case that they filed initially, and I've laid this out extensively on my show, that wasn't a bad judge. It wasn't. That judge followed the black letter of the law. That was Pam Bondi intentionally throwing the case because she didn't want Comey in jail. What she did was she had Lindsay Halligan file this case. Lindsay Halligan, I don't know, she's probably a great attorney. But Lindsay Halligan did not, by the black letter of the law, have the authority to file that case. And then they waited to file it till right before the statute of limitations ran. That was an intentional setup to throw that case. Bondi did that on purpose. There's no question in my mind. So, I think that Trump
intentionally to harm Trump. Why would she do that?
She did. I don't, because she wanted to protect this guy. I mean, she was protecting this guy.
I mean, she was given the opportunity of a life. She was already, I guess, a relatively successful AG in Florida, right? So President Trump calls her up to the big job, and she's gonna turn around and stab him in the back.
Well, yeah, quite clearly. Remember, she was brought in by Wiles, who Susie Wiles to me is one of the most corrupt individuals in Washington, D.C. Wiles was, they both worked together at Ballard Partners, who, by the way, represents Bayer Pharmaceuticals, which is why we have the glyphosate executive order, right? Isn't it funny that the place that they both worked represents the group that's now getting the wildly unpopular glyphosate order? I mean, it's quite clear they don't care if Trump gets hit as long as they're making something in their pocket. I mean, these people aren't loyal to Trump. They're not loyal to MAGA. Trump's surrounded by snakes. One of the things that Donald Trump is not good at is hiring the right people. Bill Barr, Mike Pence, Jeff Sessions, go through the list. He hires these clowns all the time that just spend their time stabbing him in the back.
You meant Bill Barr. I think you meant Bill Barr, by the way, not Bill Maher. You didn't hire Bill Maher for anything.
No, certainly not. I get a boot out of Maher's show, even though I don't agree with him very
I do too. He's becoming He's becoming must watch, at least scrolls, if not watching his actual show. But
I don't have to agree with you all the time. But I can appreciate the fact that he does try and look at things, even though it's not my perspective, but he does keep a relatively open mind on certain things.
He does, and and he might be moving some people in the far left more toward the center, like he has moved, which is a good thing. So, all right, Tom, we gotta wrap it here. I appreciate all of the great insights. We got to talk further about the deep state and how President Trump. And I've said the same thing. The biggest criticism I had from him during his first term was judge of character, and I've talked to many guests about this. Many guests about this. How did he pick the people people that he picked for all of the places that the positions, cabinet level and others, that he had to change them after a year or 2 years because they were the wrong people. And the defenders that I spoke to would always say, well, he didn't know Washington. He didn't know Washington. He came in, they gave him some people and said, here's the people that you can trust to help you pick people, blah, 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 because he was not a politician. He's not a career guy. He's a New York guy, not a Washington guy. But the second term around, boy, he will have learned from those mistakes. Well, here we are. Still the same problem, same problem of being the right judge of character or vetting or evaluating these people in high levels, important positions. Like you said, Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem. He's had to replace a number of these people already. So it's like, at what point do we start to see a pattern here? He's a tremendous leader, but not necessarily the best evaluator of loyal talent. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I mean, that's the problem we're facing right now. And that's the reason that I think that I'm very suspect about this DOJ. I mean, Todd Blanche has a bunch of people around him that were anti-J6, anti-freedom. They called parents that went to school boards terrorists. And the guy's just not doing the right thing. At the end of the day, Amy Acton, Todd Blanche, all these people, it's all just part of the same cesspool. And we, the people, are the solution. At the end of the day, watching this show, getting informed, paying attention, sharing this show, sharing my show, getting active, just taking a stand on this stuff is what's necessary. The only thing tyranny fears are we the people. And it's we the people that have to rise up on this. It isn't Donald Trump that's going to save us. It's not, nobody in Washington, D.C. is going to save us. We're going to save ourselves. And we need to wake back up. We need to get the gang back together. And we need to start fighting because we're moving in the wrong direction. I mean, we got digital. We get the digital prison on its way. We got the cars that, we just saw the stuff on the Ford car that's going to be a spy vehicle. We've got
switches that are going to be put into cars in 27.
We've got the Real ID, which is really a digital ID. It's a biometric ID system that's going to track and trace you all over. It's being tied in with crypto and a bunch of different things like that. I mean, we're going the wrong direction on so many things. It's ultimately up to us to take a stand on this, or we're in serious trouble.
Yeah, it is. So one more time, here's what we've got tomorrow. This is why we're talking to Tom today, and I really appreciate it, Tom. Tom has a massive online following ever since COVID, and he literally kind of put his law career to the side a little bit to go out there and try to challenge the COVID narratives and to fight for freedom and to fight for medical freedom and against all of the tyranny that we experience. That's why Tom is just a massive platform now, which means I'm honored to have him here. So we're going to be honored to have him on stage tomorrow with me, along with Judge Lanzinger. It's 6:30, as you can see on the screen right now. The walk down the nightmare lane of Amy Acton's Ohio. Tom will be there. I will be there, and Judge Lanzinger will be there on stage. It'll be a panel discussion, but also Q&A from you in the audience. You have to RSVP. It's free, no cost, but you can't just show up at the door. You got to RSVP. Go to, as you can see on the screen, Strongsville GOP. Well, this is the nucleus page to the specific event. Just go to strongsvillegop.org and you'll get there. strongsvillegop.org to come and see us tomorrow night in Strongsville. Tom, I'm looking forward to that tomorrow night, and thanks for coming on today. We always appreciate you.
I'm looking forward to it, Bob. I appreciate you, and I hope people are sharing this show and supporting this show. You've done so much good work for so many years, and as you've kind of moved into the podcast space, it's critical that people support and follow you and get the word out.
We're trying to let them know. Yeah, we're trying to let them know, Tom. It's a tough thing. It's a very crowded space, obviously. And when the algorithms haven't found you yet and pushed you out yet, it's all grassroots, which is what we're trying to do here is let people, tell people to share on their contact lists and so on and so forth. But your massive following that you have built plays a huge role in that too. So the more we can get out there with your folks, the bigger we'll be and the more impactful we'll be, because you and I are fighting on the same side together, and your support is crucial to that. So I really appreciate it, Tom.
Well, I'm happy to give, you supported me at the beginning. I'm happy to support you with whatever I got. We wouldn't have been able to get the word out on some of the COVID stuff without you and some of the things that you did for us. So I'm grateful for that. I don't forget my friends. So, I mean, I look forward to sending me over the link to this, and we'll get it out there on Twitter and everywhere else, and
count on
tell everybody to make sure they're supporting you.
You got it. Count on it. Thank you, Tom. All right, thanks for being with us, everybody. So we've got a good one for you today. This is a really important conversation that I think needs to happen in a country that, quite frankly, is at a pivotal point right now when it comes to protection, when it comes to the attack on law enforcement, the nonstop attack, whether it be on federal officers or local and state officers that actually support federal officers. We know what's going on. The point of the matter is you don't know what you can rely on and when you are going to be protected and when you are not. And that means you better protect yourself. And that means Second Amendment. And this is a fight that has always gone on and will always continue to be on. As long as there are lunatics trying to take your Second Amendment rights away from you, we're going to have to fight to protect them and to make sure that that constitutional right is indeed never leaving us. And that takes an effort, and that effort needs leadership. Now, we know groups like the NRA working very, very hard at things like this. There are a number of gun groups, some of them national in scale, some of them local in scale. One of my favorite guys and organizations, he's the executive director of this, is Chris Dorr and Ohio Gun Owners. Ohio Gun Owners is a very, very important group, and I want to share something with you here. Take a look at this is one of the most recent headlines that OGO has put up, and it's speaking specifically about you, me, and our rights in the state of Ohio and how they are being compromised by some of our leadership. You know, we proudly brag about being a red state, but you know what? We're a red state that doesn't always do conservative things. It's not true deep red. And one of our leaders is the Speaker of the House, Matt Huffman. And as Chris Dorr explains in this article on OGO, he's the gun rights obstacle in chief. He controls basically what gun rights legislation gets through and what gun restriction legislation gets through. It's really, really a very twisted scenario. And Chris is writing about it. He's ranting about it on his own podcast as well. And I said, Chris, can you come on and make some sense of it here? And Chris Dorr was kind enough to do exactly that. So let's bring in the executive director of Ohio Gun Owners, Chris Dorr. Chris, what's going on, brother? Good to have you, man.
I'm glad to be here. The headline kind of speaks for itself. And what you just said is dead accurate. We're a red state. That doesn't act like one, especially since we're getting live in real time examples of what the Democrats do when they take political power in a state. We're all watching Virginia right now, where Abigail Spanberger became the governor, and less than 48 hours later, they're passing statewide gun registration bills through their chamber. They're passing assault weapons bans, whatever the hell that means. Through their legislature without grandfather clauses, by the way. They're going to make felons out of millions of people, or hundreds of thousands at least. That's what the left does when they have power. And yet we're looking at what's happening in Ohio, and it's like, what's going on? We go to the polls, gun owners go and faithfully vote for Republicans every single election year. We know that time isn't unlimited, and we need to pass conservative policy while we've got the power to do it and the political will to do it. We've got both of those things right now, and yet nothing is happening. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why? Well, Speaker Matt Huffman is a great reason why.
And that's what we're going to dive into here in some depth. Chris, just since you started with the Virginia thing, and you correctly said whatever that is, it's that undefinable term, assault weapons. I mean, if I freaking hit you with a bowling pin, it's a weapon that I've used to assault you. What the hell does that mean? Seriously, because I think by making it so vague, they can then be as thorough and as onerous as they want to be in terms of what they can deny you the right to have, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this was, I'll give it to them. They're not stupid all the time, but the left won a very important optics battle back in the 1990s, 1994, when they introduced the assault weapons ban. It sounds nefarious. It sounds awful. Nobody wants to be assaulted. And that's what they're tapping into anytime that they talk about this stuff. But then the devil's in the details. We're not talking about fully automatic machine guns, as much as I think everybody should be able to own them. We're talking about the AR-15. We're talking, if you read some of these bills, we're talking about Glock 19s, Glock 17s, anything with what they define as a high-capacity magazine that can be cycled rapidly by a pull of a single trigger. They're defining that stuff as assault weapons, and they're coming in and categorically making them all illegal. So yeah, it sounds bad, but they're not at all. They're not real weapons of war.
Well, a fully automatic is a weapon of war. Definitely. We can talk about that. And you said you kind of feel like everybody should be able to have that too. Let's cross that bridge a little bit later in our conversation, because I
Sure.
think that's a very, very fascinating point. But the part about what she did, talking about Spanberger in Virginia right after taking over, this is, I don't know if this is a fatal flaw, I guess, that we have as an electorate. Even some Republicans can be swayed by people who say they're moderate on, and Abigail Spanberger pretended to be moderate on everything, which is how she won such a large percentage of the
Yeah.
centrist vote,
Yeah.
even though Virginia had turned a corner and done a lot of great things over the course of the last 4 years under Glenn Youngkin.
Yep.
But there, how do we and how do you advise people at OGO on how to recognize a true gun rights, I don't want to say activist, supporter, from a lip servicer, people who are trying to pretend to be in that moderate lane, like, I support guns, I even own a gun. You hear that from some Democrat politicians. I even own a gun. How could I be against the Second Amendment? But yet they like I said, they use vague language and everything they can to try to circumvent and limit the type of weapons that you can own, which, I don't think the Second Amendment, it's because it's not very long. It's pretty short and pretty easy to remember. It doesn't say, that our rights to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed except for this type,
Right.
this type, this type, this type, and this type. That would be a hell of a longer amendment. I don't see that.
I think that the left, and I just categorically refer to them as the left, whether it's Democrats, the social left, all those different things. They're all Marxists at their ideological core. But I
Fair.
think they do a great job at tapping into the vestiges of a bygone era where there was room for an objectively moral neutral zone. Where people didn't have to pick sides, where they didn't want to pick sides, or they didn't want to come to grips with the fact that this discussion is happening and we have to choose a side. We're either totally for gun rights or we're totally for gun control. And there's a lot of people that are still wandering around in that middle ground, not understanding that it's gone. Politically, it's gone, and we have to choose a side. And so they sit there and they demand these things. Well, you don't really want the average citizen to have weapons of war, do you? And the way they phrase that is so chock full of presuppositions, but they're tapping into our side's historical desire to live and let live. And they do that knowing that there's this huge group of people still that don't understand there is no social compact left. There is no neutral ground. And that any ground that you give up is ground permanently ceded to the other side. So I think it's a deliberate move by them to try to put you in that box. And it's time for gun owners in general to wake up and say, look, the era of compromise with the left is over. We're all the way in on the Second Amendment, no matter how they label it. And then one of the things that makes it really easy for me is just to go back to what the Second Amendment was really about. It was a check and balance on tyrannical government. It had nothing, and our founding fathers knew that it had nothing to do with thugs and criminals and stuff like that. And so once you adopt this principle that that's what it's truly for, really makes it easy for you to decide which side I'm going to be on. I'm going to be on the side that, well, I might not want a machine gun, but the purpose here is to make sure that that side never gets so powerful that they can just destroy us. And once you kind of frame it that way, well, not many people think there is a neutral ground anymore.
Yeah, they can't. They simply cannot. There cannot be a middle ground on this. You are either for the amendment and the rights that they grant, or you're not. It cannot be just a little bit. It's being a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit for the Second Amendment, a little bit for gun rights, and
Right.
not. What I want to know, Chris, how many of us are there? Are there any stats? We hear all of the time, or often, we'll hear gun control nuts talking about how many weapons there are in the United States and against the general population. And it's enough for every person in the country to have X number of guns. But do we actually have a number on how many Americans are gun owners? Are there any survey stats or anything like that we can point to? I'm kind of curious how much Americans embrace their gun rights in that regard.
As a gun rights activist, I'm kind of ashamed that I don't have this information right at the tip of my fingertips. But I know that, like, during the Biden administration, especially early on in those early months of 2021, the the background check system was getting pinged 3 to 4 million times a month. And so maybe that's not 3 or 4 million people going out and buying their first gun. Maybe that's people like me who are maybe buying a couple dozen,
Right.
to arm me and my buddies and my neighbors and my friends if they ever need one. But I would say there has to be 30, 40 million Americans who own a firearm of some type. And I think that's probably a conservative estimate.
Okay. And I'm just curious about that. I mean, because I don't know exactly what the breakdown is demographically by age. We say we're a country of around 330, 350 million people or something like that. How many of them are 18 and over? How many of them are legally able to own guns? Because I'm kind of looking for a percentage, if it's possible, to find out what percentage of American adults actually own guns. I don't even know if that stat exists. So don't feel bad about not having that at the tip of your fingers.
Well,
But,
and again, that's one thing that we want to push back against. We don't want the government to know exactly how many Americans own guns in the first place. So that's why we historically fight back against all of the gun registration bills. And we're not great big fans of the background check system anyway. It doesn't stop real violent criminals in the first place. What it is, and the GOA and other organizations have documented this, it is a de facto gun registry that can be activated by the ATF whenever they choose to see fit. So I guess I'm kind of glad that I don't have the numbers.
Well, no, but you know what? Yeah, and to be clear, I don't want the government to know who has them or
Right.
which among us have
Right.
them. But
Right.
I'm curious from our standpoint just to know how large our base is, if you will. Second Amendment supporting Americans who want to protect and preserve their families, their home, their property, themselves, and so on and so forth. I just want to know how large our base is. That's the only reason.
Well,
But
you
yes,
can
certainly,
just
I
take
don't
just
want-
just as a wild theoretical here. You could take the number of concealed handgun license holders in Ohio and compare that to the state population, and there's over 700,000 concealed carry permit holders or CHL holders in Ohio. So that gives you a pretty good breakdown right out of the gate. It's a significant percentage.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. So, Chris, tell me about OGO. You started this in 2016, right? So you're about 10 years old now. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, we
Tell-
actually did.
Tell
just
me your
celebrate.
background. Yeah, tell me your background
Yeah,
and
so
tell me how and why you started this organization.
So I'm born and raised in Northwest Iowa, the other 75% vowel, 25% consonant state. And my brother Aaron and I got started doing gun politics because in Iowa at the time, it was a May issue state, which means your local county sheriff could deny or approve your permit, and there was no appeals process. That ticked us off. My dad was the biggest opponent of the local county sheriff's budget, or the biggest vocal opponent against it anyway. My last name was Dorsey. We didn't get license or concealed handgun licenses from our local county sheriff. We took him to federal court and filed a class action lawsuit against him. The judge ended up finding in our favor and told our county sheriff to go to the local community college, take a course on the Constitution, and submit his grade back to the court and prove to the court that he passed the grade in order to maintain the requirements of that federal court. So we started off with $25 and a bad attitude and said, we got to fix this. So we took Iowa from a May issue state to a shall issue state to a constitutional carry state to a stand your ground state. And we're like, you know what? Look, we can do this in a couple of different states, and we have to start mapping this out. We're big believers in states' rights. And so we looked at DC, and we're like, there's been groups there fighting for decades and decades, and they haven't got one single bill passed. Let's focus on the state legislature. So I moved my family to Ohio in 2016. I knew Representative Ron Hood from way back in the day, and we started pushing because at the time there was Republicans that were introducing legislation, passing bills that outlawed, for example, concealed compartments in your vehicle for locking your firearms in. They outlawed that stuff in Ohio and that was Republicans that did that. And we're like, look, there's this general push on the left, and there's so many weak Republicans that they're going to start compromising on this stuff. You have to get in and polarize. So in any given state, there's probably, 500,000 people that agree with you on gun rights. So our goal in starting Ohio gun owners was to identify those people, mobilize those people, and equip them with the information coming out of Columbus and the tools they needed to be their own best gun rights lobbyists. So often the political class wants the political reality to be about what happens up there at the State House underneath the dome. They like to be the ones that are de facto in charge. And we thought, you know what, let's just reverse this system. Let's put the people back in charge. Let's externalize all of that information and give people direct access to their legislators so that they feel pressure, not from me as the gun rights lobbyist walking around at the Capitol building or the State House, but from the political pressure from their districts back home. That's the model we started off with at Ohio Gun Owners. And we quickly, in 2018, we had the Parkland, Florida shooting case. It came out and tried to pass a red flag gun confiscation bill. We mobilized significantly on that. And then August of 2019, you had the Dayton, Ohio shooting. When DeWine came out with a great big huge push for a gun control omnibus bill. And we used both of those scenarios or those political events to go out and identify and mobilize massive numbers of Ohioans to get involved in the fight for gun rights. And it really exploded the size of Ohio gun owners. But then it really transferred power from the political class back to the people, because now people had the information about what's going on. And then they had the tools that we were putting right in their email inboxes or in their social media feeds to get in touch with their state reps or their state senators. And that's how we defeated those gun control bills, even though they had full support most of the time from House and Senate leadership. They were out there having press conferences with the governor in both cases. And we just lit up the grassroots. We lit up the districts back home. And we let these politicians know, if you take one step further, you might get your law passed, but you're going to have to face angry voters at election time. And gun voters they're really good at holding a grudge. I like that about them. And we've leveraged that pretty well.
Well, you have to. You got to fight with what you can. And right now, what every gun owner can do is fight with the power of the vote. You're exactly right. So before you left Iowa to come here and do this, was there and is there still an IGO, an Iowa Gun Owners?
Yep. My brother Aaron runs Iowa Gun Owners.
He runs Iowa. Okay. And so you've been here for 10 years now. Are you going to try another state after this? Or
I work in several states already. Ohio, in Pennsylvania, and Tennessee and North Carolina a little bit.
Okay. And are those I don't know if I should ask this is a little out of order because I want to get into the Huffman thing here in a minute, but are you facing the same type of legislators and obstacles in some of the other states, or is Ohio unique in this regard?
No, I hate to say it, but Ohio is not unique. I've said this, maybe I've said this on your previous show once before, but in 2016 and in 2024, America elected a hand grenade and sent that into DC to totally shake things up. And love him or hate him, Donald Trump has certainly shaken things up. The cast of characters is all the same in the state legislatures. And sadly, while a lot of these legislative leaders have perfected the art of wrapping themselves in Trump MAGA, it's very much the status quo by Republicans in pretty much every Republican-controlled state across the country. There's some exceptions. Wyoming and Missouri, I think, are two of the top. But no, in most states, we still have this problem. It's the same old establishment with their hands on the levers of power, and they're more than willing to run that ship aground rather than ceding control back to the grassroots or the people back home. So Ohio's not they're not anything out of the ordinary.
All right. Well, we'll get into the specifics of that in a minute. But since you mentioned Trump, has he done enough? Has he spoken enough? Has he nudged members of Congress enough, or, done enough to rally the gun rights, the Second Amendment base, do you think, or has he been kind of lax on that?
Well, I would say if you objectively take the two and look at them side by side, obviously Obama versus Trump 1, Biden versus Trump 2, there's no comparison there. But we had to go out and meet with Trump's domestic policy staff in 2018 or 2019. I don't remember exactly when now, and sit down with them and explain to them. This is after Trump came out and said, take the guns. We'll do due process after. And we explained to them, look, this is going to allow the left to Kavanaugh every single gun owner. And if you can't prove that you weren't going to commit a crime,
Yep.
That's the scenario we're setting up. We're setting up gun owners to be in that same political situation, which was a firestorm at the time. That really clicked, and we saw President Trump do what he does frequently. You throw something out there and pulls back from it, and is just kind of like moving things around on the board.
Real quick before you finish your point on that, what I remember being so livid about at that time when he talked about, do the due process after, like you said, Kavanaugh, you have to prove that you weren't going to commit a crime, but it's the fact that you had to try. The fact that you had to take time off of work, hire a lawyer, go into court hearings, and prove all of this shit. No one should have had to do that. And I'm glad he did exactly what you said. He walked that back, or kind of pulled away from it and turned your attention to something else and pretended that never happened. But are red flag laws still in some states, and are they still being pushed in some states where people are going to have to not only prove they weren't going to commit a crime, but just they're going to have to actually go to court and spend money to get their property back?
They certainly are on the books in many different states. Our most local one here is Indiana. They have a version of red flag laws. And when we had to defeat the Ohio proposal, there was all kinds of media that were jumping over to Indiana, doing interviews with county sheriffs and coming back and doing stories. See, it's not so bad. It's working for the Republicans there. Florida passed it after the Parkland shooting in 2018. And that thing has been used over 12,000 times already. It's the most recent number I've seen. 12,000 times against Floridians, where they were allowed to come in and take their guns with no due process. You have more due process rights if you have a traffic violation. But if you can't go and prove to the judge afterwards that you are not going to commit a crime, they get to keep your guns. And usually it's an automatic renewal thing. And some of these states, the way their laws, the proposals are written, it's an automatic renewal thing, and it goes on your record, and then you have all kinds of employment. You have a gun charge at that point. It's crazy. And there's a proposal alive in the Ohio House today. I think it's House Bill 45 or House Bill 46, and they're still pushing that very hardcore. But
and that's a red flag. That's a version of the red flag law.
Yes, and I don't know if it's 45 or 46. I don't remember which bill number it is, but it's one of those two.
Yeah, I'm going to guess it's 46, because it certainly wouldn't be 45, because that's Trump.
Yeah,
I'm being a smart ass about that. But, so I mentioned Trump, and I interrupted you. So is he doing enough at the federal level to push and promote gun rights? And you were in the middle of that.
So this is not an excuse in any way, but but Donald Trump is not a gun guy. His son is. Donald Trump Jr. is a gun guy. But I think growing up in New York, Donald Trump himself has a totally different view of guns in general and the Second Amendment. And I wanted to take far better use. I wanted to utilize the BBB, the Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, to deregulate SBRs, SBSs, and suppressors and stuff like that. That didn't get done. We've still not gotten a single gun rights bill passed through Congress in both Trump 1 or Trump 2, and that includes H.R. 38, which is national reciprocity. This thing is just not controversial. I don't know why this stuff is not getting passed, other than the fact that maybe I think Trump would probably sign national reciprocity because the vast majority of the House Republican Conference is on as a co-sponsor. But the problem is you've got 4 or 5 Republicans like Brian Fitzpatrick out of Pennsylvania, Mike Lawler out of New York, Maria Salazar out of Florida. That's 3. And those 3 will very likely vote against that bill. And then you got a bill on the floor that fails. So I don't know. The time to have passed it was 2017 and 2018 when we had total control of Congress and a bigger majority. But I would say gun owners are the one big, huge voting block that has not gotten what they paid for by going to the voting booth.
All right. That's fair enough. That's a good answer to the question. So, but obviously, I was going to ask you about the Congress next, but you just kind of nailed it. There are a handful of Republicans on the House side, and even if you do get a bill like that one passed, you still have the Senate obstacle, which is everything. Do you think the filibuster should be nuked?
Well, this one gets a little bit down into the weeds, but without not speaking on behalf of Ohio gun owners at this point,
okay.
But I would just say that the left is going to do it now. they're going to nuke the filibuster the next time the Democrats get control. It's going to happen. They're going to nuke the filibuster and pack the Supreme Court. Like I said earlier, the political social compact in this country is over and dead. It's dead. There's no good faith effort by any one side. We saw what happened after Charlie Kirk got murdered. We see now what they really think of us. And if you look at revolutions in world history in the last 150 years, it's like it goes like in slow motion, you know, up until it gets to a leverage point, and then it just like, and then it's state-sponsored terror against its people. I don't ever want to get there, but it just seems that we're going in that. It seems that the left wants to go in that direction. They don't want to peacefully coexist. The bumper stickers were all a lie, it turns out. They don't want to peacefully coexist with anybody. And so just a knee-jerk reaction. It's going to be done. The question is, who's going to do it first?
Well, it's not a question anymore because every time I talk to Senator Marino, you know, he tells me, look, he said it's a non-starter. Not only are there 3 or 4, like you were talking about on the House side, there are 3 or 4 who will never, you know, looking at McConnell and Collins and you know, the usual suspects. Murkowski, yeah. And Rand Paul, I think, too, you know, which is weird being Tennessee. But anyway, he said not only are those 3 or 4 whose arms you'd have to twist, he said there's probably only 13 or 14 of the 53 that would be for it out loud right now. And that's because there are more Republican members of the Senate, according to what I was told, that don't subscribe to or support the America First agenda or MAGA or basically Trump. And if the filibuster was abolished and there was no more debate and they could actually, you know, get these things passed, they would be forced to actually pass an agenda they don't agree with or have to explain to constituents why they're going against it now that the filibuster is abolished and you can pass it with a simple majority. There's too many of those people. We don't even know what all their names are.
I think there's far too many Chuck Grassley's who's been in office since the year I was born in 1982, or maybe he took office in 84. I don't remember. But these are people who do not know what time it is in America. And unfortunately, if that's the case, they're not going to realize how wrong they were until the Democrats nuked the filibuster. And now it's Katie bar the door.
Yep. And they will do it. They already tried it. It's funny. I saw a former representative yesterday online saying that, you know, well, if we nuke the filibuster, it's going to give the Democrats, when they take control, you know, this free tool to do all of these terrible things. And, you know, and I was like, were you not there? Were you not watching when they already did it? And Manchin and Sinema were the 2 that they couldn't flip over. Yep. And now those guys are gone. So there is no more, you know, single or, you know, or duo of obstacles to them doing this. They will. It's not a matter of if, it is simply a matter of when they get control again. And that is gone. And every little tool that we might have had to be able to block them and stop them is gone forever as well. That's why you've got to take advantage of it.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm not only pro-gun, I'm also pro-life. But we also know that they're going to pack the court on day one, the first chance they get. I was outside the Supreme Court chamber when the Dobbs decision was unveiled, and every Democrat U.S. senator you can think of was out there at those rallies. Of course, the pro-aborts were there in huge numbers that day, and the entire message was how we're going to pack the court. So it's happening. It's just
what do you think? I personally, I honestly don't think they would stop any lower than 15. I think they'd add 6 members, and all 6 of them going to be appointed by whoever the next Democrat president is, and signed off on, and will never ever have control of the country again. In fact, we won't even have this republic anymore when that happens. We don't even have to get to the, you know, adding 2 more states and 4 more senators. And
I know, right?
No
That'll
more
happen too.
Yeah, no more photo ID. So elections, mail-in elections for everybody for no reason whatsoever. You know, it's a terrifying threat, and it's reality though. Okay, I want to go back to something you said a moment ago. Again, we're going to get into the Huffman, which is the primary reason for our chat today, but there's a lot of stuff I want to cover with you. You mentioned about gun registries, and you mentioned how we don't want the government to know exactly how many of us have guns. And my little tiny pushback to that is they can know how many, they just can't know which. You know, they don't have a right to know if I have and what I have. So to that end, I don't have an AR. but I'm looking to get one. And I've been talking to a very, very good, strong, one of my best friend on this issue, one of my best friends, period. But he's a gun rights enthusiast and a Second Amendment enthusiast. And I've asked him about getting one and if he could make some recommendations and so forth. And the first recommendation he made was not to buy one that's already made. That you can buy components and assemble your own, and therefore it is not serial numbered, and therefore you don't have to register it as well. Now, I think he was talking about this legally. That's the way it is. You can buy these things, but can you explain any more on that?
Yeah, you surely can. And what he's talking about in that instance in particular, when it comes to AR builds, it's the lower receiver that is the serialized number. So if you go out and buy a lower receiver for it through normal channels, you would have to go through that background check to get one of those that's manufactured by some other company. There are 80% lowers that you can buy. You can buy a milling kit that you just hook on a router to, and you can finish the rest of that out yourself. They're very functional. I have several. They work very well. But then, yeah, the uppers, the trigger assemblies, the whatever bump or whatever stock you choose for it, none of that stuff is serialized. None of that is required by the ATF to run through a background check. So yeah, you can piecemeal everything together. And I have several of these, and it would not do justice to the firearm to call them Frankensteins, but you can buy the best components from all these different companies and you can put it together and have one very, very nice rifle for a lot less than you can usually go out and buy one pre-made by Daniel Defense, for example. So yeah, it's a legal process.
Do you like that process? Do you like the fact that people can do it this way?
Well, sure. I absolutely do, because the criminals aren't going to, I mean, no matter what rules and what laws that you craft, the violent criminals who are willing to murder other people are going to find their way. We just saw a couple of weeks ago, they slammed a Suburban through the front door of a gun shop and stole every gun in the building, and now those guns.
That happens a lot more than people know, by the way.
Oh, it does.
A lot more.
It does. It happens all the time. And so there's no lack of access to firearms by the criminal element that walk amongst us every day. So what this, and let's face it, if you're going to go out and buy an 80% lower and then go through the machining process and then go through the process of baking the coats on in your oven and getting your wife all pissed off at you because you smoked up the whole house, that kind of stuff, you're generally not a criminal kind of guy. Okay. But this
criminals will get them no matter what.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We watched that under the Obama administration where we had numbers, and I'm going to have to generalize, but there was roughly 800,000 NICS denials under the Obama administration. Less than 70 of those NICS denials, the background check system denials, were ever referred by the ATF to prosecutors for law enforcement. I think a total of 13, ever went to trial and ended up in convictions. And so if this whole system is designed to prevent bad guys from getting guns, well, then why didn't they ever follow through with those? The reason why is because this entire system was designed and implemented as the bastard child of the Brady compromise back in the 1990s to create the infrastructure to start a database of gun owners in America. And that's what the whole system is all about in the first place. So I don't want bad guys to get guns, but here's the thing. If we actually executed justice in our society and didn't turn these violent criminals back out in the streets, when somebody rapes somebody else or kills somebody else or kidnaps somebody else, if they were executed for their crimes, that would be the deterrent. But you can't pass enough laws for the lowest
and promptly so.
Promptly so. Yes.
Because that's
not the 3 hots and a cots for 15 years shtick that we have going on right now.
15 years, that would be promptly compared to the way things are. We got people who are now coming up for their execution dates after a crime committed 23, 25 years ago. 15 would actually be expeditious by that standard.
And that's an injustice that's further perpetuated, not just on the victims' families, but then onto us as a society, because we have to sit there and live with that and subsidize it and pay for it. And all the while, these prosecutors are increasingly turning the criminals back out onto the streets.
Exactly right. Okay, one more generality on a topic, and then we'll get into what's happening here in Ohio and what we as Ohioans can do about it. And you give some great advice on what to do in your in the piece there on ohiogunowners.org or at
Mhm.
Ohio Gun Owners. You mentioned about the fully automatic, and you said not that you can go out there and buy a fully automatic, weapon, but we ought to be able to. Everybody should be able to. Tell me your thinking on that, because for those who don't get it, what a machine gun is. Obviously, fully automatic, one pull of the trigger and multiple rounds dispense. You don't have to just continue firing. It's one depression of the trigger, and away we go, like you see in all of the movies. The one real life scenario that I think of when I think about fully automatic weapons was the LA bank robbery, the 44 hours thing from I don't know what's it been, 20 years or something like that now.
Yeah,
But they were armed with fully automatic, and they kept a SWAT team at bay, and they kept it was a siege. Obviously, it was extraordinary, and that was probably a lot of people's first recognition or whatever of the damage that fully automatic weapons can do. So speak to your belief that everybody should be able to have those, as well as what we call the AR. They call the assault weapons, but we call the non-weapon of war, the semi-automatic weapons, which are obviously illegal, are still legal in most states.
Well, quite frankly, a lot of the military, when it comes to like their M4 platforms, and that's generally what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about squad automatic weapons here. I would love to have one. But most of the military is actually going away from the full auto versions of M4s, and they're going to regular fire anyway, or a lot of them are. Honestly, they're not super accurate when they're firing in full auto mode. And so it just becomes a little bit less effective. But this gets back to our core principles. If you look back at the 20th century alone, you have governments that became genocidal against their own citizens.
Yeah,
that's ultimately what the Second Amendment is for. It's in place to make sure that government never gets so much power that they can just run roughshod right over the people and enslave them and subjugate them. That's why I want to be able to own a full auto squad automatic weapon, because it's not out. We haven't advanced so much as a culture that our government cannot become tyrants. And I think if we look back at the last 5 years during the lockdowns, we can see just how willing our government is to gobble up power and make sure it never gets back to the people. So at the end of the day, yes, I do believe that we should be able to get them, because my government has them, and I need the ability to make sure that my government never can come into my neighborhood and just kill us.
but can't they always overpower you? I mean, if you come out, okay, I've got a fully automatic, you've got a fully automatic. They come out with, mounted 50 cals. I mean, they okay, then I'll get some of those too. We don't want to be in an arms race with our own government as much as we want to make sure that tyranny cannot overtake us, which is what the amendment was designed for. You're 100% right, obviously. But they're always going to have more firepower than we do. We don't want an arms race, do we?
No, we don't want an arms race. And yeah, they may have more firepower, but just look at the cave jockeys in Afghanistan. They were able to keep the United States military at bay.
That's the first time I've ever heard that term, but I love it.
I don't have much respect for them over there, but
nor do I.
But they had all of the full force and might of the U.S. military after them, and they were able to evade and take maneuvers and just keep us at bay until Joe Biden left $8 billion worth of real weapons of war on the streets. You didn't see any Democrats, by the way, attacking the Biden administration for that and all those poor innocent kids on the streets. We left real weapons of war. But it's not really about that. It's not about this line forming and against the United States military and official actions and stuff like that. It's about maintaining the ability to fight back where you can and when you can with what you have. And I want to have as much as we possibly can and train with it and be responsible with it, just like we are with all of our firearms. But I just don't think by having some of these, you drive up the cost of a tyrant and the actions they may potentially want to take. And I know we're way down the theoretical roads here, but if that ever would happen, I want to have the best tools available, and sometimes it is a squad automatic weapon.
Yeah, and I get that. And I think maybe in another way to look at it, in answer to my own question is if we believe, and we correctly do, that criminals are always going to find ways to get their hands on weapons that they're not allowed to have. It's true of a 9mm. It's true of a revolver. It's true of an AR, and it would be true of a fully automatic as well. Even if we legalize them or did not legalize them for the law abiders in our country, criminals are going to be criminals. And if they want to take a fully auto someplace and do a lot more damage and I hate to even talk about these things, but they're a fact of our lives now, a mall shooting or a school shooting or whatever, I cannot imagine how much more damage they would do with those. But again, if they're going to break the law to get an AR, they're going to break the law to get one of these too. So we might as well have the opportunity to defend ourselves in whatever, against whatever force is being applied to us.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I guess with the LA bank robbery, I guess I'd have to go back and take a look.
Yeah.
How do they get their weapons? I don't know.
I don't remember. That's kind of the point. They got them though.
Yeah, they got them.
It was illegal, but they got them. That's the point. Yeah.
And even if they went through the legal process, which exists today, now don't get me wrong, I can still go out and get a squad automatic weapon. I just have to go through all the paperwork to get there. It's advanced in comparison to a 4473 that anybody normally has to fill out for a firearm. But when you do that, you're signing these all these documents that say you're going to use it in a legal way. So those, if the LA bank robbers bought their stuff legally, well, they still were relying on the paperwork, which means they got those things regardless of the intent that they were going to use them for. So that's it. At the end of the day, they're going to get their hands on them.
Great point. All right. So now we're going to talk about what it's going to take to secure our full Second Amendment rights in the state of Ohio. So let's bring this guy back up here again. So this is the Speaker of the House, Matt Huffman, who was everybody's hero a year or so ago, whenever the Blue 22 run finally ended. A lot of people were livid that Jason Stevens became the Speaker of the House, as a bunch of Republican defectors sided with Democrats and booted the Republican chosen Speaker in waiting, which was Derek Merrin. And so we couldn't wait to get the Blue 22 and the Blue 22's personal traitor as Speaker of the House out. Well, here comes Matt Huffman from the Senate side to the rescue. And a lot of us said, good, it's about time, because we got to do something about, what just happened. But maybe not so good. This is a very, very powerful guy. And I'm trying to zoom this in a little bit more here. I don't think I can make it any bigger unless I actually change the screen for a moment. Let me see if I can do that just super quick. Yeah, I can expand that out a little bit there. Now we're gone, but it's there. So Speaker Matt Huffman, this is on ohiogunowners.org. That's Chris's spot. You want to know why Ohio's top pro-gun ban bills are stalled? One man is directly responsible, the Speaker that we were waiting for. Matt Huffman is that guy. So, all right, Chris, take us through this. Take us through three elements. Number one, what kinds of bills are we talking about that we're waiting to have passed that Matt Huffman is getting in the way of? Number two, how is the Speaker, the sole arbiter and decider of which of these bills comes up? And then number three, you have to tell us about Cindy Abrams.
Okay, let's just start with number one, the kinds of bills. These are what we refer to as common sense gun legislation. Of course, the left likes to use that as a describer of their gun control. But the Second Amendment Protection Act, House Bill 382, I'll just explain them really quickly. This is a future forward bill. This bill makes it so that if another anti-gun administration gets into power, maybe it's 2028, maybe it's 2032. I hope it's never. But we never want Ohio's law enforcement, which are paid for by Ohio taxpayers to uphold laws that we pass at the General Assembly. We never want them to be able to be commandeered by federal ATF agents to enforce federal gun control laws. So that's House Bill 382. It has over half of the Republican caucus on board as a co-sponsor on that legislation. It's by Representative Tex Fisher is the primary sponsor on that.
So that's an easy pass. That's an easy pass. More than half of the actual caucus is a co-sponsor, much less pledging to vote for it. They actually want their names on it. That's pretty
exactly.
Big.
And with a lot of legislation, you don't get this many co-sponsors at the outset. Generally, what happens is after a bill has passed, then they add their names on as a co-sponsor. This was introduced with over half the Republican caucus out of the gate. So huge support within the caucus.
That's big.
I think more than any other gun bill has had at introduction in the past.
What was the number for that one? I'm sorry, Chris. What was the number?
House Bill 382 by
382.
Ted Fisher.
Okay, got it. Go ahead.
Yep. The next one is House Bill 495 by Representative Jennifer Gross and Josh Williams. It's the Freedom to Carry Act. When we passed constitutional carry, or permitless carry is better described, back in 2021, we only applied that to concealed handguns. So we're a concealed handgun licensed state. We're not a concealed weapons licensed state. There's a lot of other states that are already concealed weapons licensed. It's not so hard for people to understand that they want to have a rifle in their vehicle now instead of separated from the ammo and locked away out of reach. This just is true constitutional carry. So if you have a legally owned firearm, you can carry it, transport it, possess it however you see fit, and the state doesn't decide how or when you get to do that. And that one has, I think, close to 30 members of the Republican caucus on board as a co-sponsor, a huge number for a gun bill at introduction. And then the third one is House Bill 498, the Ohio Self-Defense Act. This bill is so that we have quite a few anti-gun prosecutors in Ohio, and they're lobbyists at the State House with the Ohio County Prosecuting Attorneys Association. His name is Lou Tobin. He's a full-time gun control advocate. They advocate against any gun rights bill. But this bill is very simple. If you are forced to use a firearm for self-defense, this allows you to go in a pretrial hearing, just say to the judge, I'm invoking self-defense. This is a self-defense situation. And in that pretrial hearing, which before trials, there's all kinds of pretrial hearings, so this isn't something new. In that hearing, you can say, this is what we're going to do. And then at that moment, the prosecutor has to prove to a judge beyond with a preponderance of the evidence, greater likelihood than not, that they're going to be able to successfully result in a conviction. So we're not talking about two trials here. We're just preventing Kyle Rittenhouse's from ever happening if you're ever forced to use a firearm. If his lawyer could have gone in right then and said, this is what we're going to do, it's self-defense because of this, this, and this, the prosecutor would have had to say, no, we have more evidence than not, and here's what it is. We're not going to have a whole trial here, but this is a good case. And that judge could have said, okay, we're not going to victimize him a second time. That's what this is about. This is about making sure that these prosecutors have a case before they're allowed to just go through and wreck somebody's life. Because right now, Ohio's self-defense statutes are that you can't really state your case until you're in trial already. And we had a case up there in Cuyahoga County, the county prosecutor's Michael O'Malley. There was a situation where two guys were in a bar and they got into a fight. It ended up out in the back alley, and one of the guys pulled his gun and shot the other one. And the county prosecutor, O'Malley's office, locked up this gun owner for over 100 days and let him out 8 hours before the trial started off because the defense lawyer finally got video of the whole thing that clearly exonerated his client. And the problem there was that there's nothing that forces a prosecutor to prove that they have probable cause before they're allowed to prosecute a case. So it's just a good overhaul, a much needed overhaul to Ohio self-defense statutes. And as far as we're concerned, they're not very controversial. That one has a bunch of co-sponsors on it as well. And that's by Representative Beth Lear.
So real strong support, not as many as maybe the first one, but
that's correct. Yeah,
and enough votes pledged by members. If it came to a vote, they would support it.
Well, normally what happens is in the process, when we start working the committee process, there's questions and answers back and forth, and then we take the results of the committee hearings, and then we start working the building. Yeah. We had a real chance to stack on a whole bunch of co-sponsors on that SAPA bill of 382. This time beforehand, because we have gone through this process for several years now, a couple of general assemblies. So we would add on support for that if it starts moving through the process.
Okay.
We just haven't had that chance yet. So,
okay, real super quick, just as an aside, that case in Cuyahoga County you were talking about there, what was the evidence that exonerated the guy who, because so it started out as mutual combatants, it sounds like a fight in a bar,
mhm.
and then it spilled outside, and then one of them shot the other one. What was the circumstance that eventually cleared the guy?
It's been a while since I looked at the video, but it was clear evidence that the attacker started the entire thing,
Mhm.
and then the guy who was forced to use his firearm was shown to be de-escalating and trying to get out the door before he finally used his firearm. I think he got hit and stuff like that a couple times. He was definitely in a very bad situation, and the video showed it. I don't have it at my disposal, but I can surely get it for you again.
It's a great story. I like a great example, I guess, of a story I'd like to tell a little bit more. Okay,
Yeah.
so you got these three solid bills that are very Second Amendment friendly. They definitely have enough support, enough just by co-sponsors alone to let you know that this is very, very strongly supported. And as you say, when you work the building, you're going to get enough pledges for votes for these things. So all we got to do is get them up into a committee and get them out of committee, and let's go, right? Which brings us to the boss. Tell us what's going on with Matt Huffman.
Yeah, so all three of those bills have been introduced, I think, back in October, maybe earlier in September for some of them. And they have been stuck in this committee, the House Public Safety Committee, which is chaired by Cindy Abrams, this entire time with not one single hearing, not even a sponsor hearing on them. And they're simply sitting there stuck. And a lot of people refer to the Public Safety Committee as one of the speaker's committees. In other words, a speaker, if there's going to be controversial legislation, he wants total control over at least one or two committees so that he can have direct influence on it at all times through his proxies. And the House Public Safety Committee is clearly one of those committees. In Ohio and in most state legislatures, the committee process or the committee chair appointees is a process that is controlled exclusively by the Speaker of the House. That is the case in Ohio. Every single committee chairman in the Ohio House of Representatives serves exclusively is the better term, at the pleasure of the Speaker. So if you get assigned as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, which Cindy Abrams is, you answer directly to the Speaker, and then you get your orders from the Speaker about which pieces of legislation move through that committee. And the fact that all three of these
Speaker has the opportunity and the power to assign that to a committee where he has full control over what its chair does, and therefore he can send things he doesn't want to deal with to die.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yep. And there's various ways of dealing with that, but and again, it's not just the committee chair, it's the vice chairman of the committee, it's all the Republican members of that committee. They're all assigned to that committee exclusively by the Speaker of the House. And that's what's happening with all three of these bills. Interestingly enough,
who does Matt Huffman answer to?
Well, that we also talk about that a little bit in some of our videos lately. I would submit to you that Speaker Huffman, as a total political creature of Columbus, don't forget we have term limits in the Ohio legislature, right? But Matt Huffman has been serving consecutively since he won his 2006 election to the Ohio House. He served his 8 years in the House, served 8 years in the Senate right after that, and now he's back for another 8 years in the House. So what we really have is a political merry-go-round where House and Senate members just switch back and forth. If you're part of the establishment, you get to stay there. And I would say that as a political fixture of the Columbus political environment and the special interest groups, that's what he is. That's who he represents, not his district back home. Who are
these special interests? Who are these special interests then that he's answering?
Well, one of the ones that we have exposed recently is that he is on the dole by Les Wexner. Les Wexner has been a huge supporter of Matt Huffman going all the way back to 2008. And it's very odd for somebody to be on somebody like Les Wexner's radar that early into their political career. We're talking about his first reelection campaign. You're already watching Les Wexner come in. And there's a lot more than just Les Wexner. You'd have to go and dig through the campaign finance reports, but you can see massive lobby operations donating to Matt Huffman's leadership PACs or his reelection campaigns by the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and I get that, and I know there's going to be some questionable names as far as donors on a lot of people's, campaign financial reports, especially somebody who's been as successful and as long as Huffman has been doing it for, like you said, going on what will eventually be 24 years, and then maybe back to the Senate again for more. I don't know, but when I say who owns him, and that might be a little bit pejorative, who is he answering to and who is he serving that would make him not want common sense Second Amendment legislation to get votes? That he would give this to Cindy Abrams, give her that committee, and then basically instruct her to never even bring it up, much less not for a vote, but much less even just like you said, sponsor testimony, something.
So there's people that I don't know and can't point to specifically, but for purposes of this conversation, there's some obvious ones. In Ohio, going all the way back to 2004, and that predates me, of course, that gets back into the Ohioans for Concealed Carry, Chuck LaRosa, and people like that. But going all the way back to when Ohio became a concealed carry state in 2004, Ohio's law enforcement associations have historically been the gun control lobby. They are the ones who come in and lobby and testify against every single gun rights bill, again, going all the way back to 2004. So you'll have them standing there in their taxpayer-funded uniforms, like we had, like during the constitutional carry fight in 2021, we had Muskingum County Sheriff Matt Lutz was standing there in his sheriff's uniform, testifying against permitless carry, saying that there would be blood in the streets, shootouts at the OK Corral, vigilante justice if there's not this mandatory license restriction in place before you're allowed to exercise your Second Amendment freedoms. It's the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, the Ohio County Prosecuting Attorneys Association, the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police, and the Fraternal Order of Police. All four of those organizations have significant membership. Their members, the actual cops and stuff on the street, have significant membership in our organization because, to quote them, our associations long ago stopped representing us on the street. We know that we don't have any problem with law-abiding gun owners. And
they're not the ones shooting at uniforms. Law-abiding
Exactly.
gun owners are not the ones shooting at these guys that they're worried about, and I understand why law enforcement might be like, well, more guns means more people we have to deal with that might be shooting at us, and we got to have use of force and blah, blah, blah. I get it. But it's common sensible, of course, that the law abiders, the ones who want to protect themselves, just like the law enforcement agents do, they want to protect themselves from the criminals who are always going to get their guns. I'm sorry, I'm beating a dead horse.
No, it's totally true. And so what's happened with these organizations, these associations that are now the gun control lobby, is that they've been taken over by the major metro population counties, Franklin County, Cuyahoga County, Montgomery County, Hamilton County, couple other ones. These organizations, pardon me, have been hijacked. And now those big counties are the ones that control these organizations, and their lobbyists have become part of the permanent political establishment. And they don't want these gun rights bills. Their counties back home are a bunch of gun grabbers. And so they stand there. They've become the default gun control lobby that gives big old PAC checks to leadership every election cycle. So if Matt Huffman was to say, you know what, my district over there in Lima, they're a bunch of true gun owners who want this legislation. He's been hearing from them for months and months and months, by the way. And so I'm going to go ahead. We're going to green light this in the committee process, and let's get these bills running. If he does that, then he's endangering the political operations that he's got going on right now to make sure that he gets reelected, number one, but number two, comes back with enough votes to become Speaker of the House again. So the whole system is not really so much about, okay, I campaigned on the Second Amendment, and now I'm going to go and deliver. Just like the Democrats, they campaign on gun control, and then they go deliver. No, with Matt Huffman, it's I'm going to go there, I'm going to get into power, and then I'm going to immediately begin political operations to make sure that I don't lose this gavel for the next 4 or 3 election cycles. That's what's going on right now.
So it's literally a matter of personal power and personal protection of the office and as you say, of the speakership.
100%.
Over the protection of the Ohio people or their right to self-protection, self-defense through these measures that have overwhelming number of his own colleagues of his own party ready to vote for if he just gives the green light to it. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I mean, wouldn't that be self-protective as well? If you actually take the majority of the members of your own caucus, your own conference, whatever you want to call it, and you give them what they want because they all want to vote for this, and you put it through the process and let it have an up or down vote, wouldn't that kind of cement your position as Speaker? Wouldn't that make most of them happy to say, thank you, Speaker Huffman, for doing what the overwhelming majority of us want you to do? Why is that so hard?
It would with your caucus, but it wouldn't be with the political special interests in the campaign contributions.
Ones with the money, yeah. Well, the ones with the money,
and that's what it all boils down to. Not only, I think you're on a good point there. This would be awesome for his caucus because there's so many Republicans that I talk to right now in that caucus that are like, oh my goodness, this coming election is not going to be so easy. We need some red meat to throw to the base because we think this is going to be a base turnout vote. The Democrats, they're all running on one message right now, and that is, let's go F Trump. And he's like, but our side, what do we got? We don't have a lot of conservative policy that we can point to and say, yeah, we did this for you. And so I think you're going to see a whole bunch of districts this time around that shouldn't be in play that all of a sudden are in play. But Speaker Huffman is quietly sitting here orchestrating these bills through committee or not through committee because he's more focused on making sure he comes back as Speaker than he is on making sure that a lot of these rock solid conservatives in some of these swing districts come back because they delivered for their people. That's the situation.
So normally I would close this with what can we do? But you kind of laid that out, and I'll put it back up on the screen real quick now. And this is important. And by the way, I will also share this in my next newsletter because I like to give people call to action. For those who don't get my newsletter, get my newsletter. It's 5 things to know every week and 5 things to do. And among the 5 things to do, I like to include action items, things you can do to specifically help make this state, this county, this region, this country better. And that's what I do with this. And this is one of those here. So if you can't see this on the small screen, if you're watching this on your phone right now, what Chris Dorr has here is contact Matt Huffman. There's a link. You can do it on the written side. It's a pre-written link. Can I zoom that at all? I keep trying to zoom that up, and for some reason it won't. It's really pissing me off. It should. Call the legislative office at 614-466-6344 and contact Matt Huffman personally at 419-235-4780. And this is all available on the website, ohiogunowners.org. So you can find it there more specifically when you're ready to make that call or that text message or that email or what have you. And as I say, I will put it on my next newsletter as well with hyperlinks, so that you can click those messages for yourself. So that's really, really important. So that's what we kind of need to know about these. And then the last thing I have for you, Chris, my aforementioned Second Amendment rights buddy, who's a hugely knowledgeable guy. I texted him. I said, I'm going to get an hour with Chris Dorr today. Anything you want me to ask? And he said, yes, Castle Doctrine. So this is a personal question from my guy. Ask him how the Castle Doctrine is worded and if it only protects individuals in their residence and vehicles, or if other occupied structures like family-owned small businesses are covered. If people in occupied structures aren't afforded those protections, what's being done to change that? Chris?
Well, that is an excellent question. That gets into some more philosophical discussion on where the Second Amendment should apply. There's this common theme throughout some of the older gun rights generation that there's a hard cutoff when it comes to property, defending your property, that nothing is worth, shooting somebody else. And I'm like, there's been quite a few examples in the recent past where you had business owners standing on top of their businesses with AR-15s in their hands. And historically in American history, if somebody tried to steal your horse, that was a hangable offense. So American jurisprudence certainly is replete with expanded castle doctrine. The way the law is written right now, it does, I believe it only applies to your domicile or your vehicle or somewhere where you are personally, residing, like a hotel room or something like that. Certainly your apartment would qualify. But as far as being in a public place, well, the law as it currently states, if you're lawfully in a public place, you do not have a duty to retreat before using what's called reasonable force. So if somebody comes up to you and they say something like, "Hey, give me your wallet," at that point, you don't necessarily have the legal standing to pull your firearm and shoot them right there on the spot. You have to have some kind of a proof that they are trying to personally injure you in some capacity, and you have to be able to articulate that later on in court. So what we're trying to do with the Ohio Self-Defense Act.
If I may, before you go on, that's more stand your ground than castle doctrine. You don't have a duty to retreat, like you said, but you're saying you can't also use your firearm unless you have a reasonable suspicion or fear of being harmed. Castle doctrine, you don't have to have said fear, right? If it's my place, you said if you're in a public place, but if it's my public place, I own the building. It's my restaurant, my store. Somebody comes in here with bad intentions. As I decided, can I use that weapon, or do they have to actually make the first move, so to speak?
I would say if the public is invited into into like your store, I don't think the castle doctrine would apply. You'd have to be able to, under the doctrine of the reasonable man, articulate why you use force, including deadly force. Now, there's all kinds of force that can be justified in these circumstances. If you have an irate customer, it's not unreasonable to grab him by his ear and walk him out the door. And that's totally justified and reasonable. But if he's irate and you shoot him, yeah, you do not have the legal protections that you do of somebody standing in your house, your apartment, trying to get inside your car. And that's the way the law currently stands.
What about, I'm getting very, very in the weeds here and specific on this, and maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. I'm just thinking out loud here. The public is invited into your place. You have to be very careful then. You can't just shoot somebody because they invaded your castle. They're invited into your castle.
Right.
But if they come behind that counter, whether they're going for the register or it's one of these pissed off fat women who didn't get the right barbecue sauce or whatever on their food, and they come back there again into a place where the public is not welcome, into your employee space or whatever. If you, again, is that a place where you can use physical force, maybe even deadly force, to protect yourself without
I would say that's an instance where you can use physical force. I don't think it's quite is at the level of deadly force. But what we're trying to do to improve on this right now is included in House Bill 498, the Ohio Self-Defense Act, because one of the major policy gains that's within that bill is what's called threatened use of force. So if you got some thugs that came into your jewelry store and they're coming around the counter, you would absolutely have the right, the recognition under the state law at that point to draw your firearm, which is deadly force at that point. You may not be using it, but you're threatening the use of force. And that's one of the huge gains in that piece of policy, because at that point, it's a very important de-escalation tool.
Right.
To make sure that nothing gets out of control.
It's a deterrence for them to stop. Yeah, it's a deterrence for that individual to stop doing. Yeah,
surely. So I understand what your gun buddy is asking, and I think that if we could get that law passed, that would be a huge benefit to people, especially as we watch the left come unglued. I think business owners have absolutely every right to be able to say, get out of my building, get out of here right now. And if they don't, you should be able to say, okay, get out of our building. And if you reveal a firearm as a de-escalation tool and they continue to come after you, well, then they are escalating their threat against you.
Right.
And
you don't have a duty, to retreat from that.
Correct.
You can stand ground. Okay. I'm spitballing here. So just one more level to that. Because you got a great grasp of all this. And I know a lot of this is very politically theoretical right now, but still.
Not so much anymore, sadly.
You're right. Right. What if your business is open to the public, but it's closed? It's you open at 8, you're in there at 7 getting ready, and the doors are locked, but somebody comes in. Or somebody comes in through, maybe you got the back door of your business propped open because people are unloading the fresh bread for that morning's baking and breakfast or whatever the hell you have, and somebody comes into that. Should I have? I guess I know we don't right now, which was the point. Should I have the castle doctrine right to take action there, to use lethal force as somebody has entered my establishment where they are not permitted because public hours have not yet begun, and they have entered just as assuredly if they had entered my apartment, my house, my car, like you mentioned before.
That is a great theoretical case, and I would say thankfully, Ohio's laws aren't that narrowly constricted or constructed, because you can't. It's generally a bad policy to craft legislation and laws so specific that they answer every single scenario. But that one seems to be, if there's not a court case already for it, and maybe your friend has had an experience like this, then
I just made that one up, so I don't think so.
Okay. Well, so generally what happens is if something like that comes forward, that's a great tool for us to be able to use to say, okay, we've got a serious problem in Ohio law right now. And sadly, it had to be litigated before it became apparent to everybody. But now we have to go back and fix this so that stuff like this is never illegally allowed to happen again. But I guess I don't know the specific answer to that kind of a theoretical. If the businesses, if they've broken in, obviously, castle doctrine applies then, because that's your domicile at that point. Yeah. It's your place of business. It's not open for public. But if they just walk in the back door that you have unlocked, again, that's where House Bill 498 would immediately come into play with the threatened use of force, and it would be totally justifiable and reasonable, which our laws are all based on the doctrine of the reasonable man. A reasonable person would absolutely, if somebody came walking in their back door, and would reasonably draw their firearm to make sure that they're safe in their person. I love the theoretical.
You know what? I just gave you a new episode for your own podcast.
Yeah, I love it.
I want you to address that theoretical, philosophical.
We'll do a deep dive.
The business that is not necessarily your castle, but it's not open to the public. And if somebody comes in, can you blast away just as if it were your front door of your house? That's a really, really great thing. And where can people see your podcast?
They can follow us whatever their favorite social media channel is. So we're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Rumble, we're everywhere. So we go live on all of them simultaneously.
Is it under just Ohio Gun Owners?
Yep. You can just search it for Ohio Gun Owners on whatever your favorite platform is, and we're there.
And on the website, of course, we've been showing you that story that that Chris has up there about Matt Huffman at ohiogunowners.org.
Yeah.
Chris Stewart, great, enlightening conversation. Really, really good stuff. I learned a lot today, and I hope a lot of other people did as well. And I'm probably going to come back to you for more, because the legislative process in Columbus is broken. It is absolutely disgusting.
Absolutely.
The fact that we can't have our own Second Amendment rights that are going to pass, bills that are going to be passed that are being held up by one man in his thirst for untouchable power and his subservience, it would appear, and I want to be very careful here, it would appear to certain donors who are pulling the strings and causing this problem. So, Chris, thanks for the time, man. I appreciate it. Keep up the great work.
It's my pleasure.
Glad you picked Ohio, by the way. You could have left Iowa and gone to any one of the other states and moved your family there, but you moved here, and you're making a huge impact. 10 years on now for Ohio Gun Owners. So again, happy anniversary, and thanks, man.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right, there you go. That's Chris Dorr. Really, really good stuff from him. And like I said, I learned a lot, and I hope you did too.